Okay. So today we will use the data that we used from the first day, the analysis we did in Stata. So those who have that data, you can go back to it. Though we will not be using the analysis, we will not be doing analysis today, but the concept will come from that data. That's where you pick the study. So if you have your concepts, if you have the reason why I said you should get a concept, if you have your concepts, when we are structuring the work, you can follow the process to also structure your own. You can follow the process to structure your own. Then when we are doing the analysis tomorrow, you can take advantage of it and do your analysis. So maybe at the end of the lecture, you will get your work structure and also your analysis ready. So if you have your concept, you can use it to follow the work. So I think the data that we used the last time is in the group. It's in the group. So if you don't have it, you can, let me see if I can share it in the group. Okay, please hope you have seen the data in the group. And so you can download it and follow me. So this is the concept we are working with. I think we have our data. We have the countries to be West African countries, Cape Verde, Cote d'Ivoire, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Togo. Okay, and Togo. So these are West African countries. And the variables, we have the GDP per capita, CO2, PM 2.5, and then nitrous oxide, and also health expenditure. Okay. So this is the data we'll be using for the analysis, God willing, tomorrow. And we will use this study to model our work today. So if you are coming to write a paper, first, when you get your data, especially those who will discuss their work or their concepts, I realize you all have your, please, can you see the word screen I'm sharing?
Yes.
Okay. So those who have their concepts like this, so you have carbon emission, our data, we have carbon emission, air pollution, agricultural intensification, and economic growth nexus in West Africa, the role of health investment. So from the topic, realize that we are looking at the role, which is it can be a moderating role or a mediating role. But from this study, we are using or we are doing a moderating role. So it's the role of health investment. And we have your data like this. So from the data, economic growth is our dependent variable. Then health investment is our moderating variable. Carbon emission is independent variable. So this study, I think we did not include control variable because the model we were using for the study was a machine learning model. And that model, we didn't need control variable. That's why this study is not having a control variable. That's why the study is not having a control variable.
Hello, Seth. It's like you've muted yourself. Hello, Seth. You are muted. We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, thank you.
Okay, I also wanted to ask a question. You are saying that because the machine learning model, you don't need control. Does it mean that all machine learning models
No,
don't need
no, no,
control
no, no,
variable?
not really, not really. But mostly machine learning models, you don't have to use the control, but you should add them as features. You see, the machine learning model, we don't use dependent variable and independent variable. It's more of a target variable and a feature variables. Mhm. So if you are not interested in that variable, you don't have to include it in the machine learning model. You see, the machine learning model too, you have different model. But I'm saying that this study, the machine learning we were doing was for causal inference. And that one, we didn't need machine control variable for it. That's why these variables are not having control variables. Uh-huh. But it's not
Okay,
all machine
okay,
learning models. But most machine learning, even machine learning, we don't do dependent variable, moderating variable, and those things. That one too is a different field. If God permits and we get there, we will cross. We cross because machine learning we use targets, features, and those things. Yeah, we will get there. So maybe tomorrow I'll try and add uh, control variables to this. Yes, but the study I picked this from, we didn't use control variables. So the variables was the independent variable was carbon emission, agricultural intensity. The agricultural intensity we use nitrous oxide emission, which is N2, and then air pollution 2 or air quality. Let me use air quality rather because air pollution, carbon emission too is an air pollution. So air quality also, we use the PM 2.5. So these three are measuring environmental sustainability and then economic growth with the role of health investment. So if you are starting your work, manuscript, as I said earlier, manuscript is not like a thesis. It's not like a thesis that you follow the chapter structure. So your main component should be your one introduction. So you have your introduction, then you have your maybe theoretical, and bear in mind that these things are not constant. There's a different way you can modify them, but it should speak the same thing. So you can, or someone can use theoretical framework, someone can use theoretical underpinnings, someone can use theories, just theories or something. And this one too, we will talk about it later. So let me use theoretical literature review, then methodology. So you have these sessions, you break each of them down. Then you have results and discussion or result alone, then discussion. That one too is there. Then you have conclusion and policy recommendation. So this is the standard and maybe references and then appendix. That one day we will talk about that later. So this is the standard areas under the manuscript. So this is our topic. This is our topic. Carbon emission, air quality, agricultural intensification, and economic growth nexus. Nexus means relationship in West Africa. the role of health investment. So the introduction cover a lot of things. Please, someone asking a question. Okay. So the introduction part, you have to talk about the background to the study. The background to the study, but you don't give it heading like background as you do in how do we call it? A
Yes, it.
thesis. Yes, please.
What about the abstract? Oh, that one is part.
Yeah, abstract is part of the final, like you are finalizing the work. So okay, let me put it there. Yes. So abstract is there. You always write your abstract when you are done with everything in the work. You have done all your corrections, review, and everything. Then you summarize the whole work into a small, like not more than 200 words. Sometimes some journals even take 150 words. So that one you write it at the end of your study. Yeah. So thanks for reminding me. So you put your abstract there and maybe your keywords. Okay, so these things are done at the end of the study. And then gel classification. But this one is not compulsory, the gel classification, but if you add it, it adds some unique features to your work. So you can do it. So the keywords, you just pick some 5 keywords from your study. And nowadays, they have even added what we call the highlights. But the highlights, you submit it separately. The gel classification, I think it was developed by the American Economics Association. So they have classified all concepts into codes. Let me see if I can open it for you to see. So the um, concept you are working with, you go and search for the codes that talks about the concept. Then you put the codes there. We call it gel classification. Let me see if I can show you some. So today I will practice for all that I'm doing so that we will not spend another time to do the practice again. So you see, this is the gel classification. It's yes, American Economic Association. So when you are done with your work, you can come here and search. So we have A, B, C, D. Each of the alphabets have a breakdown. So if you are working with let's say climate variability. So climate variability, you see, we have general economics and teaching, history of economic thought, methodology and heterodox approaches, mathematical and quantitative. So mathematical and quantitative, we have econometric and statistical methods and methodology, single equation model, simultaneous equation, econometric modeling, game theory, and data collection and estimation. You see, there is a code under before each of it. So CO, these are the codes, CO, C1, C2, C3. So let's say I'm working with carbon emission, agriculture intensification, and economic nexus in West Africa. Role of health investment. Let me see if I can get like 2 codes for the study. So let's see macroeconomic and monetary economics. Consumption savings, monetary policy. So the person who was talking about uh, monetary instruments, yeah, monetary policies, you can use E5, or maybe E6. You can come and pick this one. International economics. Let me see international economics. We have trade, international finance, economic impacts of globalization. So all concepts is under this thing. If you like, it's not compulsory. Yeah, it's not compulsory. It's not a compulsory requirement. So I think agriculture here. So you see this study, we have agricultural intensity. The concept we are working with, we have agricultural intensity. So we can pick K1, and then I think someone who was working on agricultural demand, agricultural productivity, Alote was working on agricultural productivity. So you can come and pick Q1 or maybe Q18, and go and add it to your gel classification codes. And the person who was working on renewable energy, I think that was Prince. Yes, Prince. You can come and pick renewable resources or something. Mhm. All concepts are in this. If you are struggling, just use AI to check. And then I think we have health too here. Yes, so our study, we can also pick I I1, health investment, health and economic development. So we can pick I15 also. So that's what they call the gel classification. We call it the gel classification. So where is the concept? So we are back. Okay, so let's say the gel classification, we have I1, maybe I15, maybe K10, and let's say maybe A15. Please, do you understand the gel classification? Please, do you understand
I
me?
don't understand. I don't understand.
Maddy, you say
No,
you don't
please.
understand
Can you
me.
come again?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. As I said, you see, the study,
Like,
my study have carbon emission. It have air quality. It have agricultural intensification. Then we have economic growth. And then we have West Africa. We have health investment. So we have these concepts that we are working with. So you have to look for the codes that classify these concepts based on the GEL classification or JEL classification. So maybe, let me see if I can share my full screen so that I can share. Let me share the entire screen. Please hope you can see my full screen. So if I don't want to use the GEL classification, let's see what. So the GEL classification for carbon emission. Okay, so GEL classification for climate carbon emission is Q54. And then I think Q54 talks about climate and global warming. And then Q58 talks about environmental economics and government policies. H23 talks about externalities and environmental tax. But I think the carbon emission we are working more, just more for Q54 and then Q58. So let's go and check if it's true. So the Q classification is here. Q, so it was what? Q54. So Q54, So you see Q54 talks about climate, natural disasters, and their management, which is global warming. So carbon emission is under climate change and then global warming. Please, do you get it? So
That's
I
my
will,
one.
I will come and
Well,
add my J classification. I'll come and add Q54.
huh.
Please, do you get
No,
it?
brother, exactly. Yeah, cool, cool, cool.
Do you get it?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, so agricultural intensification, maybe when you are searching it direct from here, you will find it difficult. So you can search it from YouTube. So gel classification of, let's say, agricultural intensity. So agricultural intensity is agricultural intensity research general classified under gel KO1 classification system. So KO1, let's go and verify. What is KO1 talks about? Okay, so you see, KO1 talks about agriculture. So K1 talks about agriculture, so it means it's true. Then you come and add that one to your code. So K1. So economic growth. Their classification for economic growth. So it says K4. Sorry, O4. Let's go and verify. So O, where is O? O is economic development, innovation, technological change, and growth. So let's open O. So O4, so it's true. O4 is economic growth and aggregate productivity. So we come and add O4. So O4. Please, do you get it?
Yes.
Okay. So as we are doing how to incorporate artificial intelligence also into it, you can give it to AI and maybe provide the JEL classification codes for this study. So let's see if it will give us the right codes. So you see, it has given us 1, 2, 3. So you can go and verify. You can go and verify, but we don't have time to go and verify. I think they are correct. But if you have time, so this is what you would do. You will just remove we don't need these things. If you have a question, you can ask. If you are still not getting it, you can ask.
Hello, Seth.
Yes, please.
These gel classifications, is it only does it apply to only economics or
No,
all
no,
other
no.
fields? You have,
Every field, you can add it. You can
oh,
add a
okay.
classification to it. We have the methods and everything. So if you are using quanta method, you can go and check. You can get the method that concept for us. And if you are using experimental study, you can check and add the. So this is how you present it. But as I said, these things are not compulsory. Yes, it's not compulsory, but it gives some kind of seriousness to your work so that the reviewer will know that you are serious with what you are doing. So you see, then you present it this way. Yes, so that's how you present it. And maybe the keywords, you can use your heading. You can pick the keywords from your so mostly it's 5, maximum of 5. Agricultural intensification. But as I said, these things are done at the end of the study. That's why I wanted to skip it. Please, are you asking a question? Okay. So you see, I have my keywords too here. The highlight is maximum of 5 points, which summarize your entire study. We have the guidelines here. So highlight, writing highlight, how do we call it? The guidelines are with Elsevier or Elsevier, how you call it. If you want to learn how to write the highlights for Elsevier submissions, it's compulsory. If you are submitting a paper to Elsevier or Elsevier, it's compulsory. You have to add highlights, but that one you submit it as a different file. That one will be a different file on its own. And so this is a highlight. You see, these are samples. It should be 5, I think maximum of 5. And it shouldn't be more than there's a word limit on it. 85 characters or fewer. Yes. So highlight should be short. It should be 85 characters or fewer, including spaces. So you see how short they are. It shouldn't be long. You summarize your work into these 5 highlights. Then you include it. But that one, it will be done at the end of the study. When you have your findings and everything, you summarized everything. So if you finish your work and you want to write the highlights, you can come here and then look at the sample, and then it will help you to where should I put you? Why is this thing to worry me like that? Yes, nice. So this is the highlight. I copied the sample from Elsevier. So you have your highlights like this, bullet points. So this is how it looks like. So these are the cover page information. Then you come to the main.
Yo, Ayatum.
Okay, so let me open it and share that screen. Please hope we are following. If you don't understand anything, you can draw my attention so that I'll go over it again. Okay. So now we have the keywords, we have the gel classification, we have the highlights. But as I said, this thing should be done when you are done with the main work. That's why I wanted to start from the introduction. So the introduction, you talk about the background, the problem of the study, and then the operationalization of your variables. The background, we have something we call the funnel approach. The funnel approach, when you are talking about the introduction, maybe this study, we are looking at environmental sustainability and economic growth in West Africa. So you start from the bigger picture or the global picture, then you bring it down to the context you are working on. So you see how the funnel looks like a cone. The top is big and then the down is small. So you write it in that order and you bring it down. So maybe you talk about environmental sustainability, climate issues, carbon emissions at the global level. So you can talk about global issues, give a brief statistics on carbon emission and how it is affecting economic growth globally. You give some maybe a United Nations statistics information on a global level. Then maybe you come down to developing economies. So you can talk about developing economies, how developing economies are suffering in this issue of environmental sustainability. And then you come down to maybe Africa. You talk a brief about Africa and the same issue, then you can come down to what you are really talking about. If you still want maybe Africa and then maybe Sub-Saharan Africa, before you come to what you are working on. So West Africa, you come to West Africa. That's what you are working on. So if you are working for a country, maybe if you are dealing with China, if your studies about China, if your studies about Ghana, you can talk about global issues, a brief background of global issue on the same concept you are working on. You bring it down to maybe continent level, give a brief statistics about it. Then maybe you bring it down to the level you are working with. Then you talk about your study variables, how your study variables are related.
fungia. Kugani egari. Kugani. When you on fungia.
Okay, so let's continue. Please, kindly mute yourself if you are not asking a question. Okay. So you can talk about, then you talk about your study variables, how they are related. It's very important. How your study, so this one, you talk about carbon emission, air pollution, agricultural intensification, economic growth, health investment, how they are related, and how you are required the operationalization of the variables, how these studies are operating in your work, how they are related, the relationships among them. You give citations to literatures that have tried to connect them. If there's a theories that talk about them, you bring those theory there. And you talk about, after talking about your study variables, you talk about the gaps. This is where the problem is, the gaps, the study gaps. Some of the reviewers, this is the only thing they will read. The gaps and maybe gaps, study gaps and novelty. Let me add the novelty to it. So what's novel about your work? You have explained all the gaps, maybe previous studies, this and that have done that. This person used. So if your study, the novelty, as we explained last week, if your novelty is from your methodology, you explain the methods previous studies have used. Maybe Boateng et al. Used the Skochrane method. Douglas et al. Used maybe panel regression, maybe random effect, fixed effects, maybe this study used quantile regression. Then you establish a point that these models does not address maybe endogeneity problem. So your study is testing the model using maybe system GMM or two-stage least square method to address endogeneity. That's where your novelty comes in. Or Boateng et al. Focused on gene 7. Douglas focused on maybe gene 20. Alote focused on maybe breaks. So studies have ignored developing economies. Therefore, my study is trying to bridge the gap by focusing on West African countries which have been sidelined or have not been discussed enough in empirical studies. Then you justify why you think it should be studied. Then you justify that maybe West African countries rely heavily on carbon emissions for their production, and the economic growth is more fueled by manufacturing processes that causes a lot of carbon emission or environmental challenges. Therefore, there should be a study to address it. If your study is also about theoretical contribution, or you want to test a theory, you explain that this theory was developed based on maybe global data or global information it has been challenged in the developed economies. And this study is testing that theory in the West African economy. So you bring the study gap explicitly so that if anyone pick your work, and that's where most gets studies rejected. Most of our studies get rejected based on that. So please, that one is very important. Then you state your objectives. And note that the objective, we don't state it like how we state the thesis objective. So it may be so blah, 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 blah. This study did that, this study did that, and this study is focusing on blah, 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 blah. So the study tries to achieve the following objectives. One, so you state one, and mostly try to write in paragraphs and not bullet points. Okay, so one may be to examine the impact of environmental sustainability on economic growth. Two, so maybe the study tries to achieve maybe the following objectives. One, examine the impact of environmental sustainability on economic growth through assess the moderating effects of health investments and the relationship between environmental sustainability and economic growth. Sorry. Now, you see how I've stated it. It's not in bullet point. It's not 1, 2, 3 or So you put it in a paragraph form. If you have more objective, you can put it, and if you like, you can italize it, or you can even italize only the numbers. Or you can also put it in a question form instead of a statement like this. So you can use the study answers the following questions. Then you put them in a question. So this one, it should be explicitly stated. If it is not clear, your study can be rejected. Or if it goes for review, the reviewer will ask you to state the objectives in the write-up. Then you state the contribution. You state the contribution of the study. So what? This is objective and blah. So what? What is the contribution of your study? Then you explain the theoretical contribution, knowledge contribution, and then practical contribution. So how is your study contributing to knowledge? That one, you pick it from the gap in the study that your study is going to fill. So there's no study in this field or in this area or on this particular area. Therefore, your study is the one coming to solve that problem. I think someone asked a question. What's the importance of the J classification? Oh, like I said, especially if you're in economics field, I would advise you to add it. That's what we came to meet. You add it, and also, but it's not compulsory, like I said. These small things can get your work approved because the reviewers knows that these things you put some kind of effort into your work to the matter of even going to check the classifications, the coding of your work. Okay. Okay, so the contribution, you have to give the knowledge. So what is this thing writing in bold? So the knowledge contribution, theoretical contribution, and then maybe practical contribution or practice. Okay. So what can you give these three things in your study? How is your study contributing to theory? And then, so is it expanding theory? Is it challenging a particular theory? Is it providing or bringing a new theory? So is your study introducing a new theory, challenging existing theory, or contributing to existing theory? You explain it. Practical contribution, how is policymakers going to benefit from your study? And then knowledge contribution, how is your study filling existing knowledge gap? You explain those three things. Then lastly, you talk about the structure of your study. That one to a brief, maybe 2 sentences or 3 sentences is okay. Structure of the study. This is not like what we do in thesis. That you say chapter 1 will talk about, the chapter 2 will talk about. No. So this one you just state maybe the remaining sessions of the study are categorized. If my English is not good, then forgive me. The remaining sessions of the study are categorized into to maybe 4 sessions. So session one talks about maybe the literature and maybe a theoretical frameworks. Session 2 talks about the method adopted. Session 2 talks, and this is please is dynamic. You can change it. It doesn't mean what I'm writing is what you're supposed to. Session 2 maybe explains the methodology process adopted or the adopted methodology. And then maybe section 5, session 4 talks about or presents the results and discusses the findings. Lastly, or the last session concludes the study, something like that, and you are good to go. You shouldn't write anything long. You add this one. Please do not use these subheadings. I beg you. Do not use contribution of the study, structure of the study. Just that you should structure your introduction in that form. Then you end it. This one is very important, structure of the study. Don't give it headings. And what others too also does is they will bring the novelty and the study gap separately. So maybe they can give this one here 1.1, and then they will come and do 1.2. That one too is accepted. So novelty and contribution of the study, that one they will give it heading. Because it's very important. That's what will determine whether your work should be accepted or not. Then, so they will bring this one alone, stand alone, and explain all the novelty in the work and it and the contribution of the study so that it will not be here. So you can do that one too. It's accepted. It's accepted. Like I said, it's dynamic. Just that this is a standard procedure, but it's not a compulsory procedure. So you can do that.
I didn't get this thing.
Maddy, please come again.
I'm saying I didn't get this thing. Like, we have to give the heading 1.1 to the introduction and 1.2 to the novelty and contribution.
Like I said,
Ah,
you can do it like this, and this one will be just 1, or even no numbering. If you are using numbering, you can write everything under the introduction. You can write everything under the introduction like this.
Okay.
Or some studies also does this. They will write the introduction 1.1 and write everything and leave the contribution and the novelty out. They will not include that one in the introduction. Then they will come and do 1.2. Since it's all 1, it means they are all under one umbrella. Then they will do this one like this. Then the novelty and the contribution, they will write it under this one so that it will be more explicit, or it will be exposed more, because as I said, that's what will determine whether they should approve your work for review or they should bring it back. So some people don't want to put it inside the introduction so that it will mess things up. Some people want to bring it out as a standalone so that it will capture more attention. So you can bring that one here and write your novelty and your contribution under it. Or you can just include it under the introduction as 1.0 or 1.1. Madi, is it okay?
Yes, okay. Got it.
Okay. Please, any question? Okay, so let's come to the literature review. The literature review, we have the theoretical review and then the empirical or conceptual review. We have different ways of doing literature review, but let's talk about the theoretical review. The theoretical review, you can either put the theoretical review under the literature review or under the methodology. If your variables are developed from theory, then you have to put the theoretical review under the literature review. We have written a study that we place the theoretical review under the literature review, and there have been some of our studies that we put it under methodological review. Sometimes we developed our equations or our models from the theories. Maybe you are working with models which you derived from maybe opportunity cost theory, or you are working with a theory or a model that you develop from maybe Philip curve or maybe productivity theory, like the person who was working on total factor productivity. Those things are developed from the productivity theory, productivity model. So if your model is developed from the theory, it is advisable that you put the theoretical review under the methodology so that you develop your model from the theory. You continue with your model equations from the theory. But if you are not developing your model or your equations from the theory, just that your variables are from the theory, maybe you are like what KB is working on, the SEFQA and the TAM. He used these two theories to develop the perceived usefulness and the ease of use. That one, you can put your theoretical review under the literature review. But if you develop your model or your equations from the theory, then it's advisable you put your theoretical review under the methodology. But any of them is fine. Any of them is fine. So here you can do your theoretical review, empirical review, and let me do it / conceptual review. And then We have the last one is what? Conceptual review. So conceptual framework. Mhm. So the theoretical review is very important to your study. You have to explain the theories. So maybe this study, carbon emission, air pollution, and cultural intensification and economic growth. I need two theories. So let me look for the theories that we use for this study. Okay. The theories that we used. Which theories did we use? So theoretical framework, we use the sustainable development theory. Sustainable development theory, this study is grounded in sustainable development theory, yes. So we used only one theory for this study. The last time we talked about synthesis of theories. You can combine multiple theories to explain your study. Okay, so I think the study we use sustainable development theory. So you explain this theory by critiquing it and also explain how this theory explains your work. If you are testing the theory, explain why you want to test it. If you are contributing to the theory, explain why you want to contribute to it. If you are also developing a new theory in addition, you have to explain it. So this one, I think this study, we're doing theoretical contribution. We're contributing to the sustainable development theory in developing country context. Yes, so we will explain everything about developing sustainable development theory and how it explains the study. Okay. So when you come here, the empirical concepts, there's so many ways you can present your empirical review or the conceptual review. If you are going by the empirical review, if your dependent variable, this is how we mostly do it, but there are so many ways to present your theory, just that it's supposed to make sense. But this is how we normally use it, or the standard procedure. If you have multiple independent variable, you can use your independent variable and then your dependent variable to establish the headings. So in this study, we have carbon emission, air quality. This thing to have changed it several times. We have air quality, agricultural intensification, and economic growth, and then the moderating role of health expenditure. So this is how we will establish our headings for this session. So carbon emission and economic growth nexus. Air quality and economic growth relationship. Agricultural intensification and its impact on economic growth. Now we have the moderating role of, let me check. Yes, I think we moderated health. Yes, it's moderating, not mediator. So the moderating role of health investment in, we are dealing with sustainability and then, or environmental sustainability and economic growth. So the moderating role of health investment in environmental or sustainability, sustainability talks about a lot of things. So let me use environmental. So environmental and economic growth nexus. So you see, now I have my 4 headings. Please hope we are following.
Yes.
Okay, so this approach works better when you have several independent variables and maybe moderators and mediators. So if your mediators are two, you can add another one, the moderating role of this variable in this relationship. If you have just one independent variable, then you can go by the conceptual approach. So the conceptual approach, you can talk about concepts. So these are relationships. And the same way, this approach, you can use it when you are testing hypothesis. So if you are testing hypothesis, you can use the hypothesis as your headings, like this. But if you have just one independent variable, then you can go by using the conceptual approach, like looking for concepts as your headings. So maybe you can, let's say if our independent variable is only one, like carbon emission, then if you are going by the conceptual approach, please don't put these headings there in your work. Just write theoretical framework, theoretical underpinnings, theoretical review, and just write your theory. Then the headings, don't put these things there. Just write carbon emissions and economic growth nexus and review literatures. Air quality, don't put the headings like empirical review at the top. That's a process for thesis. Mhm. So if we're using the conceptual approach, that one you can talk about, let's say, environmental sustainability, environmental sustainability, environmental sustainability in maybe West Africa. And maybe what again? Um, so you just look for concepts and talk about it. So maybe health investment, health investment, health investment in maybe Africa or West Africa or something. Then you can talk about climate vulnerability, climate vulnerability in maybe developing countries. Yes. So you talk about, so you can get like 5 concepts which relate to your topic, but it should make sense. Then you use it to review literatures. But if you have variables like this, then you can go by this approach, using your variables to establish a relationship and then review literatures on them. Then you establish your theoretical framework. So you can also bring the theoretical framework at the down or at the bottom, like this one. Or like I said, you can take the theoretical framework to the methodology session. You can take it to the methodology session. That one too is acceptable. Okay, so let's continue. Any question? Please, any question? Okay, so if there's no question, then let's continue. So that's how you structure your literature review. You can go by this approach, or you can go by this approach. Then you have your conceptual framework. So the conceptual framework, you have to put your concept or your model into, you have to visualize it. You have to visualize your concept so that if someone picks it, I think Prince, the one who was working on subsidies and effects, realized that he showed something like that. Something like that. So let's see if we can visualize this work. So you do, I think our time is going. Let me make fast and see. So you can, let's see if I can. Our dependent variable is 3. We have one independent variable and then one moderator. Okay, so this is carbon emission. This is air quality. This is agricultural intensification. Where is this one going? Intensification. Okay, so if you are using more than one theory for a study, for example, 6 theories, three 6 theories is too much. I think theories, you can go to like 3 theories. 6 theories is too much. Yes, 6 theories is too much. So maybe 1, 2, maximum of 3 is fine. Unless maybe you are doing some comprehensive building, some model for something unique. Yeah, I know they are relevant to the work, but that, as I said, any theory that you are including into the study, it should have relevant or some serious contribution to the whole models. So if you are dealing, I don't know, if you are dealing with 6 variables, 6 variables, and each of them is bringing the theory. If you are able to justify, why you are combining all that theories, maybe you can use that. But as I said, every theory you include it will have a serious implication on the study and the findings. So you have to try to limit it a bit. But 6, if you're able to justify it, it's okay. But my advice is like go up to like 3. 3 theories is fine. Unless you are using 6 entirely different concepts, and explain why all those 3 concepts are independently relying on each theory. But if you're able to justify that, then it's fine. Sure. So agricultural intensification, and then the dependent variable is what? Economic growth. Okay, economic growth. Hey, you to be careful. So we have our economic growth here. And then we have the health investment at the top. These people to run into the middle like that. So we have it here, so you can connect it. This is what we call a conceptual framework. So you can learn it. I think KB's work, he did something like, there's so many ways you can represent it. This is just a simple way of presenting it. You can model it in any form. Like what KB did is also accepted. Any form is accepted. So the moderator, the difference between moderator and the mediator, moderator modifies or moderates the relationship between 2 variables. But for mediator, the independent leads to the mediator before it leads to the dependent variable. So this is how you present moderator. You put the cursor on the line. So like this one. So it is moderating all the 3 variables. So this is my concept. Let me delete the yeah. If you have a question, you can ask. Yes. So now I'm done with YouTube also. So now I have my concept, my framework. If it is a mediator, this is how you do the mediator. So let me assume that the health investment is a mediator. If it is a mediator, this is how you will do it. So the cursor will come here. So maybe agricultural intensification, the cursor will come here. Then before the cursor goes here, please, do you get it? This is how the mediator works. The mediator shows that the independent variable leads to the mediating variable. Then the mediating variable leads to economic growth. But the moderator moderates the relationship. So the relationship is already there, but you are introducing a variable which changes, which strengthens or weakens that kind of relationship. So we put the relationship, the moderator cursor on the line. But for the mediator, you link the variable to the mediating variable before you link it to the dependent variable. I think there's some. Okay, sure. So that's how it looks like. But this one, we are working with a moderator. So this is how it will look like. Mhm. So now I have my framework. Then I'm done. So lastly, what time are we closing? Okay, I think our time is almost up. So the methodology, we group it into three. You have the pre-estimates or pre-analysis or pre-estimates. Main estimates and then post-estimates. So this is more of a diagnostics. So descriptives and diagnostics. So this is what tomorrow we will be doing. The methodology part. And then the main model. So the model estimation. Then the post estimate is more of the robustness test. So the methodology, we group it into this. So the pre-estimate and the diagnostics checks, you can do the summary statistics, but these things vary based on the model you want to use. Maybe if you are using a machine learning models, it will not be the same as using econometric models. Even the econometric models, or let's say you are doing primary data analysis, like smart PLS, or maybe logistic regressions, primary data, survey, qualitative, these things vary. So what I'm doing more is based on the model we are working with, which is the environmental and then the economic growth. It's more of econometrics in nature. So this is how but it looks similar to others. Maybe some of them you will not do it, or you will include others. So maybe you do your summary statistics, which will have the mean, standard deviation, max, mean, skewness, normality. So you can test for normality using the Jagbera, which is JB. What again? And maybe ketosis. Ketosis. How do we spell ketosis? Ketosis. So maybe you can do these things under the summary statistics. Then you can do the correlation analysis, which will include the correlation and then the VIF. We have done VIF, which is the variance inflation factor, which is used to test multicollinearity. You can test it. Then after the correlation, you can do the unit root test. You can do then after unit root, you can do the slope homogeneity test. But these things, tomorrow we'll talk about it. If you don't want problems, some of them, you shouldn't do it. Because the moment you do any of the tests, like slope homogeneity, then you do cross-sectional dependency test. So you do slope homogeneity, cross-sectional, then you can do co-integration test. And what again? Am I missing anything? I think Gabby explained those things. What am I missing? I think that's all. If I remember any, I will add it. So you can do these things under the pre-estimates. Then you come to your main model. So please, the one who has unmuted, do you have a question? Jam. Okay, so you do your main model estimate. So first, you see this that we are having moderating variables. So you can make your direct impact assessment, direct impact estimate, which is the direct effect, like these ones, the carbon emission and economic growth, air quality, agricultural intensification. You can do that one. Then you do your moderating effect. Moderating effects. You can do that one too. So you can do this too, based on the model you are using. You see, I've not talked about the model. So you can use the panel model. You can use the quanta model. I think we have discussed this once already. You can use the GMM model, but all the model selection will be based on these results. Your unit root, slope homogeneity, cross-sectional dependency, co-integration. If you test co-integration and you realize that there's a presence of co-integration, that means there's a presence of long-run relationship. That means you have to use a model that captures both long and short run, like ARDL or pooled mean group, PMG, or AMG, or CCEMG. If there's a presence of co-integration, it means that there's a long-term relationship. That means you have to go for a model that captures both long and short. If you have cross-sectional dependency, if you test cross-sectional dependency and there's a presence of cross-sectional dependency in your work, that means, or in your data, it means you have to use a model that accounts for cross-sectional dependency, like cross-sectional ARDL, or I think Pullman group also checks cross-sectional dependency, or Disco-Cray. But recently we realized that Disco-Cray is not enough to solve cross-sectional issues. Slope homogeneity to the same thing. That's why I said any of these that you are testing, it has its own implications for your model. So if you think you don't want problem, then don't test it. Maybe if you think you cannot run cross-sectional ARDL, then don't test cross-sectional dependency. But that one too, if you escape it, some reviewer will ask you to go and check it. And if you check it and there's a cross-sectional issues, then it will affect your model. So it's better you test it early, then you address it before you take your work for review. Unit root 2, you have to test it and see if your variables are at phase difference or at levels, so that you know the kind of models you will use. So these 4 are used to decide a model. That's why here I didn't state any model. So this place you can use the panel regression, normal panel regression, which is fixed effect. Okay, let me use fixed effect rather. So fixed effect models or random effects, quanta regression, GMM, two-stage least square, and what again? Maybe they score Cray. AMG, PMG, CCEMG. We have a lot of models. So you can use any of them. You can use any of them. Or maybe VAR. Or maybe VEC. ARDL. What again? Maybe we have wavelet analysis. We have there are a lot of models, so etc. So here you decide on the model you want to use. You decide on the model. Then the robustness. There are so many ways of doing robustness. So one, you can use different models. You can use different models. You can use lags. Different or similar dependent variable. And then maybe time effects. And then what again? Okay. So different model, let's say if you use random effect for your main model, you can use maybe, if you use fixed effect for your main model, you can use maybe random effects and maybe they score Cray as your robustness to test whether you get same or similar results. You can use lags. You can lag your dependent variable. So maybe the dependent variable is economic growth. We can lag the dependent economic growth by 1 or by 2. So we can do 1, 2, 3 lags and test it and see whether we will get same results or different results. Or you can use different or similar DV. So let's say you see the dependent variable, we are using GDP per capita. So you can use GDP growth. Or you see the GDP per capita, we have current US. We have local currency, which is LCU. We have constant US. So you can use the current US for your main estimate. Then you use the constant US as your robustness. Or you can use the GDP growth as your robustness. Those who are working with agricultural productivity as your dependent, you can use agricultural productivity per capita as your main estimate, and then use maybe agricultural productivity per worker as your robustness. So robustness is like you are checking whether your result is stable and we can rely on it and it's not influenced by maybe the variables or the model. So you can combine two of these. So you can use different model, lags, and then maybe different or similar dependent variable to check. Time effect. Maybe you can group the data into two. Maybe before the financial crisis and after financial crisis. Before COVID-19 and after COVID-19. Before a certain pandemic or a certain situation. Maybe for environmental study like this, you can do before the Paris Agreement and after the Paris Agreement. I think there's a question in the box. Let me check. Yeah, I think our time is up. Let me wrap it up. Does this make the variable in the rectangle mediators because the researcher used regression? Please, which table are you working on? We are talking about. this table, the person who asked the question, I'm talking about this table. Here, it was treated as a moderating variable. It's not a dependent variable. Oh, I'm not getting the question right. Does this make the variables in the rectangle mediators? Because the researcher used regression. Please, I'm not getting your question right, so please kindly. So here, the health investment is being treated as a mediator. So like I said, the model that you pick, you will use the model to estimate the direct impact without the moderator. Then you estimate the impact again with the moderator. So you estimate 2. Then the time effect, you pick a particular time. So maybe like financial crisis time or something. Okay. Then you can do heterogeneous analysis. All these things is just to ensure that your study or your result is reliable. So the heterogeneous analysis, you can, I think someone has sent something, but the picture is not loading. Oh, why is this thing not open? Okay. So, and if I'm basing the argument on the position of the arrows, it means that it's only the attitude which is serving as which is serving as a mediator. It is only the attitude which is serving as a mediator. The remaining perception, awareness, and expectation are independent variables. So the social stigma, self-stigma, self-esteem, having a mediator of attitude on utilization of counseling. Because of the square, if I'm basing the argument on the square you have drawn, then it means you have to pull the cursor back to the square, not to the attitude. If you push the cursor back to the square, it means expectation, awareness, attitude, perception are being treated as mediators. But as it looks like now, the arrow hits only the attitude. That means it is the attitude which is serving as a mediator, and all the others are serving as the independent variable. But if you are working based on the square or the shape around the middle, it means the 4 are serving as mediators. Thank you. I think our time is gone, so let's try and end it. So the heterogeneous analysis is also part of the robustness test. So heterogeneous analysis, you can do a country level analysis. So maybe this study, we are having 15 countries or maybe 10 countries, or you have 5 countries, you have 3 countries. You can do the analysis for each country. And that's what we call the heterogeneous analysis, doing it for individual entity. So you do for Ghana, you do for each of the countries in the model. Then you see whether your model is still stable. That's what we call the heterogeneous analysis. So that's the methodology. You explain all those things. Then you present the same thing under the result and discussion. So here, the methodology, you have to explain your data, how do you call it? Variable selection and measurement. So you summarize your data. So you put this one there, this table. Always try to include a table like this for your. So you put this one under it. Then you explain it. So variable selection and measurement, or data and variable selection. We can do it like the data and variable selection, like this. Then you explain this. So your summary statistics, you can put the actual result here, or you can take the actual result to your analysis. So you explain all these things, all these things. Then when you come to the analysis, you present the same thing. You present the same thing, but this is where you put your results. This is where you present your result, but this is the methodology. You explain the co-integration. We have a lot of co-integration. We have the first level, sorry, for panel co-integration tests, like the Westerland, we have Pedroni, we have cow tests. The ones you will use, you explain them here. The cross-sectional dependence, you have the Bruch-Pagan test, free test, a lot of tests. You explain them here. Unit roots, are you dealing with first generation or second generation? We have the SEPs, we have the IPS, we have the ADR, we have a lot of unit root tests. The one you are doing, you explain them here. The main estimate, the one you would use, you explain them here. Post estimate, would you use the robustness? Would you use different models? Would you use lag? Would you use different or similar DVs? Would you use time effects, or you do heterogeneous analysis? You explain all those here. You can also do the causality test. So the causality test, you can use the Dimitrescu's test to test for causality. Then that one too will be there. Explain it, but when you come to the results, that's where you are coming to present your actual results. That's where you are coming to present your actual results. So maybe if you do causality, you present it here. Then finally, you do your discussion. So discussion, you explain your results or your findings, and you compare it to past literatures. So maybe the study correlates or it support the findings of. So the discussion, you use the literature review and your theoretical review for the discussion. So what did you find? What did you find in your study? You compare your findings to the literatures you reviewed. So maybe this study find out that carbon emission has a positive relationship with economic growth. This supports the findings of Boateng et al., who stated that carbon emissions, blah, 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 blah. Or this findings contradict the findings of Boateng et al. Or it supports the theory, the sustainable development theory, which explains that. Then you state what the sustainable development theory talks about. That's the discussion. So you discuss your findings. Then you come to the conclusion. The conclusion is in 3 parts. The conclusion, the policy recommendation, limitations, and suggestions for future research. So this is where we explained the last time that we get concepts from. So you conclude your study by reiterating your aim, the purpose of the study, the objective of the study, the methodology you adopted, the findings, you summarize your findings and everything under the conclusion. Then the policy recommendation. So what? You find that, so what should we do? Then you give policy recommendation. This part is very critical. You should make it specific, not generic recommendation. If you say that countries should adopt renewable energy, so everybody knows that a country should adopt a renewable energy. Maybe you find out that carbon emission is contributing to high expenditure in health or something. So countries countries should shift to renewable energy. That one is not a proper recommendation. You should give specific recommendation. Maybe they should build a credit system which will sponsor or domestic credit facilities or credit facilities to support private investment, or should make loans available for private investment. They should give us their tax waivers for companies who adopt renewable energy. They should establish something, facilities, specific policy recommendation, not generic. Then you come to the limitations. You acknowledge the limitations of your work. Maybe the data period is very short, or you couldn't capture all the necessary variables, or the model that you used is not very strong. Future studies can use different models. So you acknowledge the limitations of your study. After acknowledgement, then you give suggestions for future research. Then you are done. You do your references and then your appendix, then you are good to go. So that is the standard structure of a manuscript. As I said, this is not how do I say is that this is not the only way of presenting it, but this is the standard procedure that we used. So you can make some adjustment to certain parts, but it should have all these components in your work. You should have all these components in your work. Please, any question? Any question? I'm listening. You can unmute and talk.
That's
Please, you can talk.
okay. So the heterogeneous analysis and casualty tests and those discussions should be under the resultant discussions, right?
Yes, if you would do it, you
Okay.
first have to explain it in the methodology that the study used. Maybe the causality, you have a lot of ways for testing causality. So which one would are you going to use? Explain the model in the methodology, but when you come to the findings, you test it and present the result there. The same thing applies to the heterogeneous. You state in your methodology that heterogeneous analysis will be performed. So you do country level analysis to test the individual country experience or impact. Then when you come to the result and discussion, you actually run the result under it and explain the results. So anything that you would test in your result and discussion, explain it in the methodology session before you go ahead and do it. You can't go and do it in the methodology without giving prior idea about it. I observed the
Okay.
data was collected before writing the article. Why? Please, your question is not that clear. Always, you need to collect your data before you start writing. So, sorry, I think I have a little distraction. Anne, so normally that's how research is done. You collect your data, you analyze your data, get your findings. I think these things we have already explained it. You can't start writing your work before you go and look for data. So like the concept, those who show their concept to us beginning of the lecture, we realized that some of them has already started writing the work. And I asked them, are you sure you are going to get data for this work? And it will be a problem. So you always have to get your data, analyze your data, get a good result before you start writing your work. You can't start writing before you go and look for data. It won't work that way. You can finish writing the top part and you will not get the data. Please, do you understand? So you don't
Yes.
start.
Hello.
Okay.
This is Anne. In fact, it's Annie Sawyer. This is my first time for the Saturday section. And,
Oh, okay.
with regards to research, I know we start our introduction, we talk about the conceptual and everything. Then we look for what do you call it? The instrument that we are going to use to, take our data. And from today, what I saw, the data was already taken with the variables. So if you take these data and then later you don't have a theoretical basis or a conceptual basis for it, then what are you going to do?
Okay, so you see, that's why we do proposal before we start the work. We don't write the paper, or you don't start writing introduction, with the theoretical review and everything before you go and look for the data. If no, you write everything and you will not get data for the concept. So that's why we do proposal, research proposal. So the research proposal, you give a proposed variables you want to use, proposed theories and everything you want to use. So I think when we did the conceptual development, we explained these things, that when you get the concept, try to establish your dependent variable in your concept. Try to establish your independent variable from your concept. And all these variables should have a theoretical backing. So you should get a theory that explains such relationship. So when you get all those things, it doesn't mean start writing. It means you have all your variables that you want to use. Then you go and look for data for the variables. When you look for data and you get the data, come clean the data, run the results, and make sure that you have a reliable data and a reliable result. You have a significant result which you can write on. So after running your result and everything, before you even start writing your main work, you don't have to start your main work before you go and look for data. If we're doing primary study, write a proposal for your work, develop your instrument, go to the grounds, collect your data. So after developing your instrument, you go and collect your data. If you want to do pre-testing, it's fine. You can collect sample data and test your instrument. If it is fine, you go ahead and collect your main data. After collecting your main data, come and run the results and see that your result is reliable or is good. If your result is good, before you start writing the main work, you don't have to go and write the main work before you come and look for data. If you start writing and you don't get a data for your work, you have done a course 90 job. The foundation of every research is the data. Please, is that okay? And please, is that okay?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank
Please,
you
I'm
very
also
much.
having a question.
Please, you can ask.
God bless you, sir. Keep for giving us an overview and enlightening us on how the research, the background and everything. But I didn't post my concept though. I have it here, but I wanted to ask a question that for my variables, I was having a threshold variable and mechanism variable, but I wasn't having that mediating variable. So I want to know the differences between the mechanism variable and the mediating variable.
This one, unless you explain your mechanism to me, then I can help you with what mediator is. Then you check if they are the same. Because I taught mediator and mediator and moderator. and you are coming to tell me yours is mechanism. So, boss, you have to
Okay.
explain what you mean by the mechanism to me. What do you mean by
Oh,
mechanism?
okay. You see, the mechanism, I was looking at how, unless I see you back door to explain the topic so that we understand.
But what
But
do you
when I
mean by
say
mechanism variable?
the mechanism variable basically used to is a variable that affect the other. So maybe the independent variable affecting the dependent variable, or the independent variable having an effect on another variable. And it's part of my topic, but when I explain it to you, you get to know the mechanism I'm using for my concept.
Oh, okay. Then you have to see me backstage. But what I know mechanism approach, but mostly I deal with mechanism when I'm working with machine learning. Because mechanism is treated more as a mediating variable. You see, there are different channels that certain variables passes through before it reaches the dependent variable. So it's mostly treated as mediating variable. But when you are talking about mechanism variables, it's more complex. It's more complex. It means that the variables go through a lot of processes or a lot of situations before it finally gets to the dependent variable. But when you deal with mediating variable, it's a direct variable, like this leads to that before it leads to that. But mechanism, the analysis of mechanisms, I mostly deal with that in how do you call it, machine learning. So I'll post a study, one of my studies on machine learning, which have mechanism approach or mechanism variable into the group. Then you see how the mechanism variables works. So I don't know why you are trying to work with mechanism instead of mediator, so that you'll be free.
That's why I'm asking, because I realized that in what you are teaching, mine was a mechanism, and it was part of my concept though. So you, unless I see you, then we delve deeper on
Yeah.
it.
Maybe there's
Uh,
also another way of dealing with it. I have to also go and read about it. Or I have to come for consultation from you. Yes.
okay.
Okay, so we will
All right.
see backstage. But I would advise that as a beginner, deal with moderator and mediator for now before you move to a different space altogether, which will be a problem for you.